It's football and other F words, and I forgot to tag us in the fucking tweet. So make sure, Mike, that you go in there and repost it, re-exit, whatever it is on the 440 Sports Twitter page. But it's football and other F words, the number one Trevon Wesco podcast in America. We stand by Trevon. He is what he is, and you guys got to quit making him be something he isn't. And that is going to be one of the few things that we talk about today. We're going to be talking about the victory over the Los Angeles Chargers at home, a thrilling overtime victory because the Tennessee Titans love playing close games. And we're going to also preview the disaster that is the Browns and what the Titans can do, which should be fairly easy to beat this team. But as we know, like we just said, the Titans love to play in close games. We'll be talking about all of that, but I'm joined by Mike Herndon at Mike Herndon NFL on X. I'm Zach Lyons, just because I didn't introduce myself, at FWordsPod on X. Our sponsor, Bluegrass Beverages, been around for 50 years. In fact, they're doing all kinds of different celebrations to celebrate being around in business for 50 years, serving the local community in Hendersonville, Tennessee, and the surrounding area. September 28th, they are going to be doing a whiskey and tequila tasting. It's free, 555 North Main Street in Hendersonville, Tennessee. I think it's a pretty much almost an all-day event. It ends around 4 p.m. Get there. They'll have some food trucks probably as well. They did last time. And if the rolling recipe is there, those guys now listen to the show. Their food is flipping amazing. I could do a flip over that food. And it is awesome. So head over to Bluegrass Beverages, Hendersonville, Tennessee, sister store, Sinkers Beverages, East Nashville. Mike, the Titans won. And I think we're a little surprised maybe that they won. You had them. What was the score? What was the score?
I had to have been really close. I actually meant to go back and look it up before the pod. Maybe one of our loyal listeners will remember exactly what I said. I do not remember, but it was very close to 27-24. It was somewhere in that range.
It
might have been 27-20 actually, if I'm remembering correctly.
That is actually 2 weeks in a row that you know what? Twitter just screwed us because I did tag us in it, and I don't know why they didn't put that up on there. Either way, sorry to get distracted there for a second, but you're pretty close, and you were pretty close week one too. So these score predictions you got going on, pretty right on the money. You're still wrong, but hey, you're not as wrong as what you usually are.
Yeah, I've been pretty dialed in. I did have the Titans winning in a close game, low scoring game against the Saints week one. So I'm 1-1 on picking the winners, but yeah, the score predictions have been almost dead on.
Almost dead on. All right, let's talk about this. Where do you want to start? Because there's a lot of places to start. We can start at the offensive line. We can start with the defense and how their mean-ass Chargers just picked on Trey Avery all game. We could talk about, Kevin Byard kind of is not having a great start to the year. And there's a lot of stuff that we could talk about. So I'm going to let you choose. I normally direct, but I'm going to let you choose. Where do you want to start?
Let's start with the offense, just because I find that discussion to be the most interesting right now.
All right, let's start with the offense. Let's start with the offensive line. Xavier Newman, I guess he's dropped the Johnson. I don't know. I always like calling him X and J.
It's officially listed as just Xavier Newman on the Titans. So that's what I'm going with.
These kids can't ever pick a name. You got Shaquille Leonard, who is Darius Leonard. You got, Robbie Anderson is now Robbie Chosen, who was Chosen Anderson.
Yeah, Chosen Anderson.
Then he switches. It was Robbie with a Y to Robbie with an IE or vice versa. Yeah. Just choose a name. Tyrod and Two-Rod.
And he changed his last name because he wanted it to say Chosen One on his jersey, which, I mean, if you were good, maybe. But if you're Robbie Anderson, I'm not calling you anything besides Robbie Anderson. I'm sorry, buddy.
Oh, man. What a ridiculous generation that we are currently seeing unfold before our eyes. Just choose a name and stick with it. He comes in. He starts the game, which was a disaster from the get-go because he
Yeah.
gives up 2 sacks, and they put one of his sacks, PFF did, put one of his sacks on Andre Dillard, which is not Andre Dillard's fault. So both of the faults, according to O-line expert Ryan Watson and Superhorn, are on Xavier Newman. Now, Andre Dillard did give up 2 other sacks that are his, and so he's up to 2 sacks, 3 pressures on the season, because he didn't give up any other pressures but sacks, which is very odd. So, like, week 1, no sacks, all pressures. And then week 2, all sacks, no pressures. Quarterback hits and hurries.
The balancing of the universe. There was a lot of that in this game.
There was. If you look at I've been doing this stuff at StackingInbox.com, where at the end of the week or at the end of the game and start of the week, I put up the replacements, how they're all faring and replace people. So, like, right now we're in Dennis Daly's zone for a week 2, because that's when he came and played. And man, it looked really bleak week 1, right? Like, Taylor Lewan played last year at week 1, Andre Dillard played this year, and they kind of looked way bad. Then once you insert Andre Dillard in there, they got really close together, because basically you're averaging it out, right? Taylor Lewan plus Dennis Daly averaging all out. And man, Dennis Daly really affects the curve for the 2022 Titans. You always know how bad he is, but when you start looking at the data again, man, he was just really piss poor. But Andre Dillard is the weakness on the offensive line. We've known that he was the biggest question mark on the offensive line, but Ryan Tannehill still performed really well against the Los Angeles Chargers defense, which on paper has all the talent in the world. The only problem is the man holding the play sheet is a moron.
Yes. Well, and they also, and I think this goes into the offensive line analysis here too. Joey Bosa only played, I think, 19 total snaps in this game and was super effective. Had 2 sacks and I think 4 tackles on 19 snaps, which is insane. Because I think only maybe 12 of those were pass rush snaps. So he was like 2 for 12 on sacking the quarterback when they dropped back to pass, which is incredible. But and also, Khalil Mack is still a big name. I think his play is pretty well dropped off at this point. So it wasn't the stoutest defensive line, but I thought it was an okay performance for the most part by the offensive line. Outside of those first couple drives, once they got Newman out of there, who was clearly in over his head. I mean, and look, this is like his first. I think it was his first start, or did he start that Cowboys game last year? I can't remember now.
I think he started the Cowboys game.
He might have.
But that would mean that him and Dylan Radins both started the Cowboys game, right? And I don't know if that's...
No, Radins was hurt by that point.
Was he hurt by that? I don't know why I read that somewhere that he played that Cowboys game.
Yeah, no.
And maybe it's the Packers game Radins played.
So I think Newman did play in that game, but did not start. He only played 4 snaps last year. So this was his first real action in the NFL. So look, it came at him fast. They were running all kinds of stuff over there to that side, because that is clearly where you would attack if you were the Chargers. You're going to run all your games, all your exotic pressures right at the new guy who has never started a game before, and Dillard, who struggled mightily last week. So it makes total sense. They ran a bunch at him. It was super effective. They looked discombobulated. They looked like 2 guys who had never played next to each other before, which they are. But then I thought it was a credit to Radins that he came in and settled it down pretty much immediately. It's almost immediately. As soon as he came in the game, it really settled down over there. Radins was clearly better stepping in at that left guard spot, even if he wasn't, amazing. I thought he was solid, especially for a guy coming off of a ACL surgery 9 months ago. It's still crazy to me that he's even playing, much less playing pretty well. So credit to him for coming in there and handling business. But yeah, I thought it was okay performance by the offensive line. They kind of protected those guys an awful lot. There was a lot of those max protect shots and stuff like that, which were some of the bigger passing plays in the game. So they're still not trusting those guys a ton. And every time it felt like it got to third down, it was almost a guaranteed sack, throughout the game, even in the second half. So it's still a work in progress, but not as bad as it was last year.
Right.
So
Isn't, I mean, because that's what we all said was the benchmark. It just doesn't need to be as bad as last year. And, last week, pass block win rate was like 5th, and now it's 16th this week, which is, to me, what I think what you're seeing unfold is like, there's a bunch of offensive lines from like 14 to 21 that are pretty much all the same in rankings and stuff. And to me, that's just where the Titans need to live. If they live in that area, then the team is going to be pretty good. And they lived in that area this week. And a lot of plays developed, some massive deep shots. I mean, it looked like that Ryan Tannehill was able to get in a groove and able to trust a little bit more his offensive line. In week 1, it felt like there was no trust there, and there were a lot of plays that worked if only he had executed them. So I thought it was a good bounce back performance. Like, I look at it with the offensive line, and I know it's not perfect or anything, and that's fine, but like, how much leash? Because everybody wants to overreact to the stats. I feel like that Andre Dillard is producing, or the offensive line as a whole are producing. They love their PFF grades, which are the most utterly, I repeat, I love PFF advanced stats. They sometimes get stuff wrong, but for the most part, they're pretty reliable. The stupid PFF grades are bad. And like, if you can't unlock, if you are not paying for PFF and you're just sending overall grades, you don't know what those overall grades entail. So like, I am so out on PFF grades. I always put like, for what it's worth, here's a PFF grade, because everybody, people generally like it, but they're not. It's not a very good system.
The problem is that for like offensive linemen, there's not like a great stat that captures anything, right? Like, so it's all either you watch the guys play and you know how good they're playing just from very closely watching, which, let's be honest, most fans are not watching the offensive line at all during the game until there's a sack, and then they watch the replay to see whose fault it was, right? That's right. Generally how, most, and that's fine. Like, offensive line play isn't exciting most of the time for most people. So, but PFF also becomes like shorthand for those people, as far as like, that is the one metric that's out there that is digestible, that people can assign to an offensive lineman. So that's what they usually end up getting judged by. Like every other position. And I think secondary kind of falls into that category to some degree as well, just because it's, you can provide the coverage stats, which I think are useful from PFF. But PFF only grades, and this really turned me off to PFF grades for secondary players. PFF only grades players when they're targeted. Did you know that?
Yeah.
They do not assign a grade to a play for a corner if they're not targeted, which means if a guy like, let's say, Sauce Gardner is playing on, one side of the field all game, and they never throw the ball over there, because guess what? Sauce Gardner is eating dudes up on that side of the ball. He's not getting any grades for that. So let's say they target him twice and he gives up 2 big completions. He's going to have a grade of like 39 from PFF, even though he might have played really, really good football for 59 of the 61 snaps he was on the field.
There was some game where Jeffrey Simmons, as a couple of years ago, Jeffrey Simmons went off and they gave him like a poor defender grade, and it has something to do with like assignments or blocks or wins on a play or something like that. And I'm just thinking, yeah, I'm never listening to PFF grades again. And you brought it up because we were talking about Trevon Wesco, but Dr. Gibby is the highest rated defender. And does that really grade translate to what you've seen on the field and his impact on the field?
I believe he's the highest graded player on the team right now.
Like, come on. Games. That's how you should know that what the PFF grades really do not translate to what reality is. Now, all the advanced stats, really great. PFF rant over. What were we even talking about? Oh, we're still talking about the offensive line. Really, he's really great in the run blocking game, right? Like Andre Dillard. He's really
been
great.
So shockingly good in that respect, because I did not expect that at all. All over his Eagles tape, I thought he was a leaner
Yeah.
and just like not a guy that was going to fire off the ball and move anybody. And he's done that. He's been really good. I thought the offensive line, I mean,
has been really
for
good
the
run blocking compared to last year by far.
yeah, I mean, I tweeted it during the game. That I was like, I hope they stick with the run right now because they were getting a lot of push up front, and it's only a matter of time if you're moving that line of scrimmage, 2 or 3 yards off the ball every play. That eventually you're going to get that displacement, and the back's going to find a crack and be gone for 50 yards. So I felt like they were close to popping some runs there, especially in the second half as that Chargers defense seemed to wear down a bit. But yeah, I think the offensive line has been really good run blocking.
So the question is, like, how much of that how much of a leash does Andre Dillard have because of what you're talking about, which is he's really good at the run game, and this team really loves its run blockers. And I want to hear your opinion because my opinion is that I don't want to think that it's like a Dennis Daly situation, because we've seen them pull Xavier Newman out of a game, and typically they just let those guys play until halftime, but they pulled him like fairly quickly. So I don't know if this is a new regime where or a new process that we have to be like, okay, well, if Andre Dillard isn't looking good by the bye week, it's a good time to replace him with either NPF, Dylan Radins, Jalen Duncan. I don't know. Maybe, because I don't think they moved Skoronski over, but I kind of feel like because he's such a good run blocking left tackle, I don't know. I mean, like, I'm kind of thinking that buys him a lot of leeway, right?
Buys him some. I mean, look, Dennis Daly was an okay run blocker as well. That's why he stayed in the lineup for as long as he did, was that he was fine.
Yeah, but Andre Dillard is way better than Daly.
Dillard's been better than Daly
through
the first 2 weeks. The pass blocking's been bad. I mean, look, if you look at Daly's, I know Daly, like, people almost, you can't say anyone is worse at football than Dennis Daly. It's like become that extreme now. If you look at the numbers,
I think Trevor Penning's pretty close.
And Penning was bad. Penning was absolutely terrible. It's amazing how different Arden Key looked against Rashawn Slater versus Trevor Penning 2 weeks in a row. And that's not a shot at Arden Key. That's just Rashawn Slater's really, really good, and Penning is really, really bad. So if you look at Daly's numbers over the course of last season, he allowed 52 total pressures. Obviously, Dillard's at 9 right now, so he's on pace to be
he should only be
significantly. At 6. No, it's 6 non-sack pressures, right? Because he had 6.
Did he have 6?
I'm looking at total. He had 6. I think it was 6 hurries, maybe.
Maybe I just screwed up on my math then. My memory.
But yeah, he's at 9. He's at 9 total pressures. Daly finished with 52, so he's on pace for more there. He's on pace for more sacks allowed too. Now, look, I'll even give what's his name? Dillard. All the D names here give me trouble. I'll give Dillard credit for the fact that one of those 3 that he was credited for on Sunday should not have been his, for sure. So we'll give him 2 through 2 weeks. That's on pace for obviously 17. Not hard math there. And Daly allowed 12 last year. So he's on pace to give up more. Now,
but we'll see.
Know. It's small sample size. Like, I think he looks better just generally. If you watch him, he can move and stuff like that. Daly couldn't move and also would get destroyed by bull rushes. So Dillard's problem is he just gets destroyed by bull rushes, which, by the way, Myles Garrett is going to shove him like 3 yards deep into Tannehill's lap on every single play next week. And that is the matchup that scares the shit out of me. And will keep me up at night all week just thinking about how are they going to possibly contain Myles Garrett, given their tackle situation. But I think Dillard will prove to be better than Dennis Daly, but I'm just saying so far it's been bad enough that it is like a conversation. So I don't know. I think the leash, though, to answer your question, like, kind of depends on what Dylan Radins looks like. And if Chris Hubbard keeps playing well at right tackle, when Nicholas Petit Frere comes back, do they look at Petit Frere at left tackle? Do they?
I brought that up on Robbie and Rexroad on Tuesday. I was like, I mean, they got options.
I mean,
I
there
just
are
don't know
guys.
if any of the options are necessarily better than Andre Dillard.
Yeah, I mean that's that'll be an interesting thing to watch because I still think Radunz is going to end up starting on this offensive line somewhere. Now they might not, look, 2 games is what it is, and they could be looking at it and saying, yeah, but we know Dillard is a better tackle than Chris Hubbard. Like we just know that, and regardless of how well Hubbard has played in 2 games, they also know they've helped him a lot with chips and alignment and things like that.
I believe Hubbard's gotten a little lucky because he has 5 blown blocks and none of those have turned. I think only one has turned into a pressure. So he's got 4 blown blocks in passing that have not turned into any kind of pressure. And I think it sounds like to me that Tannehill just got the ball right before he needed to, or got the ball away right before he needed to. So I think Hubbard's a little like mascara on a pig.
Yeah, I think it's a little smoke and mirrors right now going on with his performances so far. So it wouldn't surprise me if they decide.
Sometimes, smoke and mirrors is all you need.
Yeah, I mean, it can get you by for a few games, right? I mean, there's been moments where we've been fooled into thinking a poor player is better than they were based on a couple games too. So,
here we go. We got QC Hawk, and I know Pretty Boy Lipschitz is in here as well. Both trashing Trevon Wesco, saying he's been bad too, which is not true. He has, yes, I will say this: his penalties have to stop. He's got 2 crucial penalties, 1 in each game. Has got to stop. But as far as blocking goes, he's been really good. He's allowed 0 pressures whatsoever. He's only had 2 bad blown blocks, and those were both in the run game, 0 in the passing game. And he's played, that's 2 out of 36 run blocking snaps. I don't understand where the Trevon Wesco hate is coming from outside of the fact that he has 2 penalties, which you cannot have.
The penalties and the drop, right? Like, I mean, that's...
Yeah, I just literally went through and just said that he's not a bad run blocker, and Pretty Boy Lipschitz still saying that he's a bad run blocker. Probably because of PFF grade.
And I don't agree that he's been bad. Now, he hasn't been, like, otherworldly. He's not, like, the second coming of Mercedes Lewis at this point or anything like that. But Wesco, I think, has been fine as a run blocker. He certainly has been better than Swaim was last year. Mm-hmm. And his track record says that he's one of the best run blocking tight ends in the league over the last 3 years. So 2 games isn't going to throw me off of, oh, they've got to bench Wesco. Like, no, I just don't think.
And like you said, he's been better than Swaim, which is, it's all about being better than what you were last year. It's not about having the most elite run blocker of all time.
Yeah, nobody's saying that, Wesco for Pro Bowl or anything like that. I mean, he's a replacement level player. They paid him $1 million like to come play, like veteran minimum, basically. So we're not talking about like, oh man, this guy's amazing, but he's been fine. And he's a better blocker than Josh Wiley, certainly. I think Chig's been good as a blocker, which I thought Chig was good last year.
Yeah, Chig's been very good in it, and they've given him a lot. Wiley has been terrible, and maybe people aren't really paying attention to the numbers and are seeing Wiley out there blowing blocks all the time and think it's Trevon Wesco. But for all intents and purposes that I've seen, when you look at blown block percentage and everything, Trevon Wesco's done really well. He's not Jeff Swaim. And again, there is room for improvement. So when you have people that say, well, Vrabel said that he wasn't like happy with the tight ends in general, why should he be? They're not playing to a level that is great. Like a coach is supposed to hold your position group and your players to a higher standard than maybe they can perform to, right? Like, you want them to always be better. You never want them to be complacent. That's part of coaching, part of leading. You are trying to motivate them. And there are games and points in the entirety of the tight end room for Tennessee Titans. It's Josh Wiley, there's Trevon Wesco, and Chig all have improvements that they can make realistically. So if they're not making them, no coach is going to be happy with their performance, overall.
And I'll also say that this podcast has been, I will anoint us the chairman of the Thomas Odukoya fan club And sure, yeah, they could pull the international player pathway exception off of him at any point and bring him up to play on a Sunday, and I'd be perfectly happy with that. I think he's a good player. I think he's got a chance to be like their next guy in that Trevon Wesco, formerly Jeff Swaim role, and maybe he will be better than Wesco. I don't know, but I also don't think Wesco's been so bad that it's like, oh, you've got to cut him today or you got to bench him and, bury him under the bench or whatever. Like, I think he's been fine. He needs to clean up a few pre-snap penalty things and catch the ball when it's thrown to him, but they aren't going to throw him the ball much either. Like,
that's the other thing is like, how many targets does he have over his career? Probably under 20, right? Like, to me, it's just, you got to put realistic expectations on these players. Stop making them something that they're not. Trevon Wesco is a blocking tight end. He is not adept at catching the football.
Yeah,
and listen, if he's getting targeted, that's really on the Tennessee Titans. That's not on Trevon Wesco.
Yeah, I mean, he's like gonna always be the last read on any pass play that he is involved in.
It's like, a desperation attempt.
Unless they are literally scheming something up to try to catch the defense sleeping because they just think there's no way they're going to throw the ball to Wesco, we don't even have to cover him, then that may be the only play where he actually is in the read and not just a check down. So, it's look, people never like blocking tight ends. I know that, but I don't think Wesco's been a problem.
Blocking tight ends allow your deep shots, to Treylon Burks and Chris Moore. Just want to throw
and
that
he's
out
been
there.
really good as a pass blocker and helping out with the tackles. Who, hey, Chris Hubbard probably owes him half of his PFF grade right now.
He needs to lend it to him. They need to have a shared. They need to have a PFF grade pot where they all put them all in there. That way it helps people. But back to Dillard, because we do have a couple of questions about Radunz. Let's say Dillard's projections keep trending. He's allowing anywhere from 3 to 6 pressures every game. And you're heading into the bye. And at the same time that Peter Skoronski's been out, Dylan Radunz performed admirably. Chris Hubbard has been okay at right tackle. What's your preferred method of replacing Andre Dillard? Is it just moving a new person into that spot and taking him out? Is it moving Skoronski over? Is it moving NPF over? Like, give me your top 3 preferred methods of replacing Dillard.
I don't want to mess with Skoronski at all because I think he's playing well at guard. I think he's important in there. I don't think you want to mess him up or potentially mess him up. Like maybe he could do it, but I think you're risking making a bad left guard and a bad left tackle happen if you move Skoronski over. Whereas right now, I think Skoronski's looked really solid at left guard, and you can do some things with him and trust him in there, I think. So I think you stick him where he is. That's clearly where they think he belongs long term. And I think you let him continue to grow and thrive there. So I put that at the bottom of the list for me. My preferred first choice would be Dillon Radunz, I think, because Radunz, we've seen him at left tackle before. That's all he played in college. I think part of his issue moving to right tackle was that, hey, he'd never done that before. He played his whole life as a left tackle. And it is a little bit difficult to all of a sudden, everything that you usually do with your right hand, you're doing with your left, and everything that you usually do with your left foot, you're doing with your right. And it's just muscle memory stuff, right? So sure, he's played on the right side now some, but I wouldn't be surprised if he still feels more comfortable at left tackle. I think he even said that last year, that was still the spot of most comfort for him. And look, when he played against the Chargers last year at left tackle for, half a game that we got of Dillon Radunz finally at left tackle before he tore the ACL, he looked good. He was fine. He was not giving up a ton of pressures. In fact, I don't think he gave up any pressures in that game. I think that's the guy that I would most want to see at left tackle if Dillard continues to struggle, because I think Radunz can play left tackle in the league. I've been on that for really his whole career now. I don't see any reason why Radunz can't eventually play left tackle, and it seems like maybe he's gotten some of his balance and stuff like that cleaned up, because, you know, he's not falling on the ground every play like he was, you know, early on. So I'd give him a shot first, and then my second choice would probably be Petit Frere at left tackle. But I'm not in favor of moving Skoronski out. You're not going to get me on that train.
All right. Tennessee Titans offense looked pretty good. Didn't look great, but Ryan Tannehill had a pretty damn good game. He had like an 80% completion percentage, and he was only expected, according to Next Gen Stats, around in the 70s, which is mind-boggling to go from week 1 to week 2. It was the sudden shift that we all kind of knew was highly possible. So it's not a surprising performance by the Tennessee Titans. But what has been surprising through 2 weeks is the creativity and the usage of empty sets and motions and all of the things that we know that the Tennessee Titans haven't utilized as much as they should the previous 2 years. They're back to basics, but they're doing a lot of creative things. What are your feelings through 2 weeks? Give us a letter grade. Let's avoid the letter grade. Let's not be those guys. Let's give me your overall thoughts on Tim Kelly versus Todd Downing.
I mean, I think Kelly clearly has shown more creativity. He's broken free from a lot of the bigger gripes that I had towards Downing during Downing's tenure here, in which honestly a lot of these gripes extend beyond Downing all the way back to Arthur Smith and Matt LaFleur before him. But the first down run rate, it had literally sat between 59% and 65% every single season that Mike Vrabel has been in Tennessee, going Matt LaFleur, Arthur Smith for 2 years, Todd Downing for 2 years. So 5 years, it has sat between 59% and 65%, which is like either it's in the top 2 or 3 every year in the league as far as first down run rate. So the Titans turning and handing the ball to Derrick Henry on 1st and 10 was like one of the easiest predictions you can make in the entire NFL. Like, it was just that was what was going to happen more often than not. He's perfect 50-50 right now. And I don't want him to go all pass crazy and be like 70% pass on first down or anything like that, because that's not who this team is. It's not who they're built to be. It's not who their personnel is set up to be. But a 50-50 balance to me is good. I like it because it's not predictable. You can get Henry, his touches, which are still important. You can get Tyjae Spears his touches, and you can also take advantage of the fact that has been a Titans tendency for many years, and you can run some of those deep play action shots that, keyed the 2, big touchdown drives in this game where they hit Treylon Burks and then they come back and hit Chris Moore, both of them those classic Titans max protect play action, 2-man route combination plays. And they got favorable looks both times because the defense is focused on Derrick Henry, which, by the way, Derrick Henry's still getting a ton of attention from opposing defenses. 50%, 8+ in the box so far this season for Derrick Henry on his carries. So, which is easily tops in the NFL. So they're getting those opportunities and they're actually taking them on first down, which is a departure from previous regimes. And I think that may be the thing I'm most excited about. And then there's also the 2-back stuff, which I love because it is a clear indicator that Tim Kelly is not trying to he's not going to square peg round hole it, right? Like, he is willing to take what he is given from a personnel standpoint and mold an offense around it. Because if Tyjae Spears wasn't Tyjae Spears, and if he wasn't a guy who was making plays all camp, was making plays all summer, was making plays all preseason, he wouldn't be giving him, the snaps and the touches that he is. It would still be Derrick Henry, over and over and over again. And there would not be 2-back sets on the field with 2 running backs back there and all this pony package stuff that they're running. This is all Tim Kelly adapting to his personnel and figuring out creative ways to use them. And I loved the triple option this week. They also ran, I highlighted it in my piece at paulkalarski.com. today as well. They ran this really interesting like orbit motion, and then it was almost like a triple option, but they faked the dive to Henry, and then they had Spears crossing over and running like a little flat route, a little shovel kind of look, which the Chargers defended really well, but still a really interesting and cool play concept that I think will work at some point during the season. And they also busted out this cool like it's like a fullback lead swing pass, which I don't think I've ever seen anyone run before, but they had Julius Chestnut in the game in kind of an offset eye pistol formation, which, you know, his usage of pistol and shotgun and stuff like that is also way up. But Chestnut kind of just runs a flare route. Henry runs the swing route behind him, and Chestnut basically is just a lead blocker. It's just like a pitch play, but it's a pass. And it gets Henry out on the edge in space quickly with the ball in his hands and a lead blocker. So like I love that he's doing these kind of things, and he's being very creative with the way he uses this personnel group. So I'm excited about what I've seen from Tim Kelly. And look, if Ryan Tannehill throws some better balls in week 1, I think we're probably having a totally different conversation about the Titans offense generally, because it's, I think they probably scored 25 or 30 points in that game if Tannehill hits open receivers.
Well, let's talk about the offense and defense as a whole before we go into the defense. QC Hawk says, not sure if you guys covered it already, but should we take Sunday as a positive for the Titans, or was that just another Staley blowing a game because he actually sucks as a head coach? Like, I'm going to say that it is a positive sign, but it is not the defining sign, because here's what's happened. Because I think there's a psychological and emotional element to it that I talked about over on a football show on Monday, every Monday and Thursdays at 1 p.m. Central Standard Time. I talked about how they can say and tell everybody and deny that nobody is thinking about the 7-game losing streak that turned into an 8-game losing streak, and it's unfair and all that kind of stuff. But they all are thinking about it. I mean, it's just that's your natural tendency as a competitor to be thinking, I need the win. They got the win. And the NFL can be very streaky. So I feel like there was a lot of good from Mike Vrabel, a lot of good from the coaching staff. And I felt like the game plan by the Chargers was smart, right? They attacked the left side of the offensive line and sent all kinds of exotic blitzes over that way. They attacked Trey Avery constantly. Really good game plans. And I don't know if Brandon Staley really did something, and maybe I'm just forgetting, but really did something that was egregiously dumb. But I do feel that there were times where Justin Herbert was the one that needs to carry a little bit of the blame for their loss and not being able to overcome that.
Yeah, I would agree. I'm not a fan of Staley as a coach, but there wasn't anything like crazy bad. Like I think he punted on a 4th down. He probably should have gone for it.
Oh, that's right. There was that 4th and 1. You're right.
So there was a couple things like that, and I just think it's generally.
But I will say this
plan thing.
He punts on 4th and 1. Mike Vrabel goes for it on 4th and was it 5 or 6?
Yeah,
or something like
6.
that. And that was in the first quarter or something. And so like both of them had those kinds of mistakes.
Yeah. So I don't know that I would say like Staley
I don't think the Titans were gifted a win. Is what
No, by no means. Not in this case. Like, but I do think Staley's a bad coach, and I think the Chargers should be better than they are given their talent level. I don't think they do a good enough job game planning, scheming, putting things in place to take full advantage of some of the opportunities that they have. But that's been true of them for the entire Justin Herbert era, the entire Brandon Staley era. And so I don't, they still won 10 games last year. So it's not like this is a nothing.
It's kind of true for the entire Chargers era.
Well, pretty much. Yeah. I mean, you go back as far as you want, really.
And Marty Schottenheimer had that curse. It's like, it's just it's kind of like Denver. There's just something about it. And only Peyton Manning can solve your problems.
Yeah. They need to try Peyton maybe at quarterback. But no, it's, I think it was a good win. But yeah, like Zach said, I don't think it also means that like, oh well, the Titans are fixed and now they're a contender. Like I think we need to see a lot more.
Yeah, there's a lot more that I want to see, but something that I felt was encouraging coming from this Chargers game was the use of Traylon Burks deep. And I think we should take a quick victory lap because we told everybody that the deep threat is Traylon Burks for 2 years. And that, well, technically not a full 2 years, but like 2 football seasons. And they are choosing to do it and use it that way. And it worked. And that's it. Tyjae Spears is not your deep guy. Chris Moore kind of is, but he's not really. It's always going to be Traylon Burks.
Yeah. Yeah, and Burks is a real deep threat. Like that's the thing, and people get so hung up on. And I talked about this in my piece as well this week. People get so hung up on 40 times for deep threats specifically, and it's like if a guy doesn't run 4.3 flat, it's like oh no, he's not really a deep threat. Traylon Burks ran 4.55. He also hit 20.7 miles per hour as a ball carrier. Like that's not the speed he was running when he was running the route. But after he caught it and was stumbling, he was at 20.7 miles per hour, which is the 17th fastest time recorded for any ball carrier this year, according to NFL Next Gen stats. And the fastest time for anyone weighing over, I think, really like 215 pounds, I think was the heaviest guy that was above him so far this year. So he is extremely fast. He also hit 22.6 miles an hour in college at Arkansas, according to their GPS system. On I think it was a 91-yard touchdown during his time there. And guess what? He also led all of college football in deep receiving yards during the time that he was in college. He also led all of college football in 20-plus yard receptions during his time in college football. This has been his role his whole career. This is what he is good at. And yes, he is the deep threat. And watch him, like there's some clips too, you can find them. There's a clear out route that he's running against the Bengals last year, where he's clearing out for somebody underneath, and he just turns on the jets, and he is flying. Like he doesn't have the great stop-start quickness, like he's not like Tyreek Hill or anything like that. But he has, once he gets built up to speed, he's as fast as anybody, and I mean he is able to run by, and you saw it in this game. Like he got to build up because they were playing off coverage with Asante Samuel Jr., and he just flat out ran by Asante Samuel Jr. So I think Burks is a weapon in this kind of stuff, and they need to use that as much as possible because he is the perfect guy because you can put him on the field for everything. You can still find other ways to get him the ball, but he can also give you that take the top off the defense kind of player, which opens up all the DeAndre Hopkins and Chigakonkwo stuff over the middle. And when Kyle Phillips comes back, all the Kyle Phillips stuff underneath and the Tyjae Spears stuff. There's so much stuff that's going to open up for them in this offense as they utilize that more and really make it a threat that defenses have to prepare for. So I'm super encouraged that he made that play, and I hope we see a lot more of that moving forward.
Only 2 more games until wide receiver 3, Kyle Phillips, is back in the lineup, and I'm pretty excited about it. I think that's going to be really interesting and open things up because he's not a one-down player like your friend Tyler at Tic Tac likes to beat the table for. That he's just a one-down player. Yeah, he's only a punt returner, and he's only a one-down player. He's a multiple-down player, as seen by the evidence of Week 1 last year, which is the only evidence that we have, unfortunately, by the way, which is the only evidence that we have, and I'm very tired of talking about Week 1. I would love for him to stay healthy so we could talk about his usage more.
Yes.
One quick thing. They've been terrible on second down, Mike, and I'm sick of it. They are terrible.
It's kind of the offset of first down because they've been incredible on first down.
Incredible on first down. They're incredible on first down, terrible on second down. But I have a solution, and I wrote about stackingtheinbox.com, and here's the solution. More Chig on second down. Because on the 2 times he's been targeted on second down, he has gotten 6 yards, which puts you in a favorable, typically, if you take that average and take their average to go, you are left with, because their average to go on second downs is 8.4. And they've been on pass plays, they've been only gaining, where is it at? Down here. they've only been gaining 3.9 yards on pass plays on
Yeah, it's
second
been
down.
bad.
It's been horrible. And then that means you got 4.5 yards to go. So if you target Chig, you get at least around 2.4 yards to go, which you can finally bring in Derrick Henry because guess what? They're so far behind the sticks. Derrick Henry has only been on the field for one attempt on third downs. He has only gotten the ball once, only touched it once on third downs. That's very unlike this team. Now, listen, that's not take away from Tyjae Spears and what he's been able to do. By the end of the day, they got to fix his second down because this is not how you can win games in the NFL at a successful level that you need if you want to be considered contenders for anything. AFC South, AFC Division, Super Bowl, it does not matter. You cannot go through life living on third down success because they've been terrible at third down success too. So it's just like a chain reaction. It's like they have Stockholm syndrome. They've been kidnapped by they're held captive by third downs, and they've tricked themselves into believing that they actually love third downs, that third downs are great when they've been terrible since like 2021 under Todd Downing at third downs and at converting first or second downs into first downs.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, they've got to be. I think they've almost switched first and second down this year. That they're being more aggressive on first down and more conservative on second down.
Yeah.
And look,
It's
I
been
do
crazy.
I do understand that it's you've got to get the carries in there somewhere, right? Like you got to get the handoffs in there somewhere. But you also can't just continually do something that's not working. So the Titans need to get a little bit more aggressive, angry. Like that, don't play for third down, and that's been a gripe of mine about this team for so long that I can't even remember when it started. So that you don't like third and short is not a good thing. Third and anything is a bad thing. You want to get first downs on first and second down, like that. That is what good teams do and good offenses do. So don't be trying to say, all right, we can get to 3rd and 3 here. That's not a goal. That try to get the first down every play. Like that is what I think the Titans have to like adjust their mindset to if they want to become a great offense.
All right. NWI wide receiver 1, right? Is that where we're at right now? He's wide receiver 1 on the team. No, but I think good. This is here's the thing, and because this comes again from QC Hawk as well, who's been very active in the chat and provided us a lot of topics, and I appreciate it.
Yeah, good comments.
But we talked about that, with the addition of DeAndre Hopkins, NWI is slotted as your wide receiver 4, wide receiver 5. Now, technically, once Kyle Phillips got injured, he bumped up to wide receiver 3, and he's performed really well. And he obviously has a trust of Ryan Tannehill, but obviously they've schemed plays where he can be open because nobody believes in Nick Westbrook-Ikine probably as a defense. Like they're probably not, game planning for the NWI Red Zone Express coming through their field. So to me, it's like this is kind of what we talked about, that when you sign someone like DeAndre Hopkins, everyone is properly slotted to their rightful place, and he is benefiting and being productive because guess what? He's not the wide receiver 2. He's not the wide receiver 1. He's seeing favorable coverages across the way. This is exactly what you want. And I just feel like everybody's got to, give props. Give some props.
Yeah. As a long-time NWI defender, because I've always said, like, it's not like he's terrible, right? Like, he's not good enough to be your wide receiver 1. He's not good enough to be your wide receiver 2. It's not his fault that the Titans ended up in the position where he had to play those roles the last few years. And I feel like he's gotten an unbelievable amount of hate from this fan base over the fact that, like, he's just a pretty good, like, rotational wide receiver who, by the way, blocks his ass off, who, by the way, will play on special teams and do the dirty work, who, by the way, is wildly trusted by this coaching staff because he puts in the work to understand and know the entire offense and how to play all 3 wide receiver positions. He has all these traits that are awesome. Now he's never going to be a 4-4 guy. He's never going to be like a great separator. he's not even going to ever be a really great contested catch winner. But can you put him on the field and trust him to get a job done? Absolutely. Absolutely you can. And that is valuable in a league where, like, we remember the Taywan Taylor experience, right? Like, Taywan Taylor was fast. He could make plays. He was exciting. I fell in love with all that. But you couldn't trust him. You couldn't trust him to be in the right place on the field. You couldn't trust him to do, the right thing. You couldn't trust him to block. You can't play a guy like that. And that's why Taywan Taylor's out of the league. And NWI's here, still making plays, still being involved in the offense. And look, he's been a massive success story for this team. He was an undrafted free agent wide receiver, the player that we always fall in love with during training camp, during preseason. And he's made good. He's made as good as
nobody likes him.
as any undrafted wide receiver that this franchise has ever had besides Drew Bennett. I'll put NWI's career up against all of them, and nobody likes him, and it's baffling to me. And people just talk so much shit about him, and I feel bad for him because he seems like a great guy. And like I'm guessing
Braden loves him because Braden's all like Braden's locker room interviews always sent around NWI saying something because he's the only guy. I think Braden may be the only media member that ever goes and talks to him at these.
I mean, he's a likable guy. Like, he should be a very popular figure on the Titans with this fan base, and he's just not for whatever reason. I hate it for him because he should be extremely popular.
My thing is like you talk about, he's reliable. He's not explosive. He's not great, but he's reliable. I mean, I've always had the issue of it's just that the Titans didn't have good depth in front of them, right? And, a lot of people were getting mad because he was getting all these snaps on Sunday. And I'm like, yeah, but DeAndre Hopkins is obviously on a pitch count. Like, did you guys think that DeAndre Hopkins was going to be full go? I do have a little bit of issues while we're on this topic, and I want to circle back to the offensive coordination and all that kind of stuff. A lot of plays where both Burks and Hopkins weren't on the field, supposedly. Yeah. I have not gone back and watched the tape, the all 22, and it's hard to tell from the broadcast angle, but Superhorn has said that there's just too many chunk set of plays where neither of them are on the field. What do you think about that? Is that just a personnel decision? Is that from a standpoint of we want to attack the defense this way, and we feel that these set of 11 give us a better success to attack the offense attack the defense in a certain way?
I think some of it is probably goes back to the Hopkins pitch count issue, as far as especially last week. But I do think that there's something to, like, I think they want to rotate these guys a little bit, keep them fresh. I don't think they want Hopkins and Burks playing like 90% of snaps, which, I know some teams do. But again, if you're going to ask Burks to run, 22 plus miles an hour on a clear out route, 60 yards downfield, you're going to need to take him out after that, right? Like, you got to give him a play off so that he can catch his breath, get his legs back underneath him, and he's not tearing a hamstring because you asked him to run 4 clear outs in a row. And he was gassed and breaking down physically. So I think there's some element of that, they want to have NWI, they want to have Chris Moore, in there for some snaps. I agree that, like, I feel like Burks or Hopkins needs to be out there most of the time. Now, there can be some plays where, maybe you've got those other guys in there and you're running something that, is more schemed, and not as reliant on those guys getting open or being able to make a play against tight coverage. I think that's fine. Like, you're going to have some like package plays where you can put those guys in, but obviously you've got to kind of pick your spots where you can get them out and get them rest. And you're going to want them in there for third downs for sure, especially Hopkins. And yeah, I think it's okay for them to rotate some. I mean, right now for the season, Burks leads the Titans wide receivers in snaps at 99. NWI has 95 and Hopkins has 88. I think those are probably flipped between NWI and Hopkins if Hopkins didn't have the ankle issue. And then Moore has 39, which honestly, I'm a little surprised that Moore has so few snaps compared to NWI, because I think Moore is a good wide receiver. Not a great wide receiver, and maybe good's too kind too. He's a fine wide receiver, right? Like he's fine. But he made a great play in this game. Like that route, I detailed that out at on my piece for paulkowarski.com as well. But the way he bent that route out to stack the corner and give Tannehill the widest throwing lane possible so that Tannehill didn't have to shape that ball in. He could just throw it out there and let Moore go get it because he did a great job of stacking the corner. And it's like those little savvy veteran details like that make a guy like Chris Moore effective and make a coaching staff trust him on plays like that. And I thought that was a phenomenal play. And I hope Moore gets more opportunities here moving forward based off of that play. I think you can keep those guys fresh without making it a situation where Hopkins and Burks just are not being used enough, right? I think it's a delicate balance, but I don't think they're totally out of whack.
It also goes to the part of creativity and trying to mix things up, trying to keep if it's just Nick Westbrook-Akine and 2 tight ends on the field, well, they're obviously going to run it. And then you go and pass from it and all this kind of stuff. It's just all a part of that. Yeah. We're still talking about the Chargers game. Arden Key silent, but that's okay. That's just kind of how this defense is going to work. If one guy is silent, there's probably another guy making noise, and that guy was Jeffrey Simmons. Danico Autry had a few good plays, but I want to talk about Harold Landry. He has a sack. Is he the slowest person on? Is T.R. Tart faster than Harold Landry right now?
There's some painful moments watching him drop into coverage. I'm like, oh, buddy. It just looks so different than it did.
And when let's say something about this real quick, is that when you're in a 3-4, right, and you're rushing 4, that means that one of the others outside linebackers has to go out in coverage if you're only rushing 4, which this team likes to do. They don't like to blitz. They like to rush 4. That means Arden Key is the choice out of the 2 right now that you send to threaten the quarterback, which means that Harold Landry has to play in coverage. Now, can they devise plays that avoid maybe Harold Landry being on the field in this situation, especially because they went from 5 in the week 1 to 10 coverage snaps in week 2? I don't like that there's an increase, but sometimes, that's just how the offense called to play that you weren't, that forces that, right?
Right.
But man, he looked so slow trying to run at people. And I know that he's coming back from a ACL and all this kind of stuff and an injury and everything. But good Lord, did that ACL hold all of his speed?
I mean, it is a marked difference in speed and agility and stuff like that. Like when he was chasing, God, I can't remember who he was chasing towards the sidelines.
God, it was so bad.
But I was like, oh, this is hurting me. Like it
looked like you out there running. That's what it looked like.
There's some lumbering going on there. And it's sad because Landry, that was his kind of calling card, was when he was in space, he could really run and turn it loose and track down those athletic quarterbacks and things like that. And I'm sure that will eventually come back. I mean, it does at some point with these guys most of the time, but it needs to be back pretty soon because he's not been terribly effective as a pass rusher so far. Now, maybe the sack gives him some confidence, and that was a nice rush on his part. It was a little bit more of a power rush, which is different for him. But it's maybe that helps get him going a little bit. But yeah, it needs to find the nitro. Again, the speed is not there.
Not there. How would you rate the defensive backs in this performance? Now, obviously, Trey Avery, maybe he needs to be a little bit excluded from this situation or from this assessment, but it really feels like Sean Murphy-Bunting is starting to catch on a little bit, and there's still some miscommunications when they're in zone coverage and passing off the wide receiver to one another. There's still some issues there, but overall, obviously, Trey Avery takes up 100 yards of the 300 passing that Justin Herbert had. And he took up I think he was targeted like 38% of the throws went to Trey Avery. Like, I feel
15
really bad for him.
15 targets is wild.
Yeah, I feel like he did okay for all of that, considering of who he is versus who he's going up against. But I kind of felt like it doesn't show up on the stat sheet, but it does show up in the efficiency stats. This seems to be kind of like the offensive line, an average defensive back group, even without the performance, without Christian Fulton and Amani Hooker on week 2. But how do you kind of feel about it? Do you feel like as a pretty good performance? Because that's kind of how I describe it. Yeah, it's pretty good.
It was okay. Yeah.
Pretty good.
I mean, I did feel like there was times, and I honestly, I kind of feel like their biggest issue right now is the middle of the field. Like, I just feel like there's too often there's guys open in the middle of the field. And I'll admit I'm a little bit disappointed so far in Azeez Al-Shaair. I thought he was going to make way more plays, both in coverage and around the box.
I feel like they're asking him to do a lot that he didn't do in San Francisco because there's not someone next to him. Like, I feel like he's being handcuffed and brought down because Jack Gibby is his starter, and that's the only guy that they're comfortable with playing at the inside linebacker position opposite Azeez. Like, I kind of feel like that's kind of like it's just dragging him down. He's got a ball and chain, and he's like sinking to the bottom of the ocean, swimming with the fishies.
I think they're definitely asking him to do a lot, but I would hope that gets better. And it was great in camp. So that's the thing I'm thinking too, is like, it's probably not going to remain this bad throughout the season. And the same goes for like Sean Murphy Bunting, I feel like was like the defense's version of Ryan Tannehill, where like he was not very good in that first week, obviously gave up the touchdown to Shaheed, peeking in the backfield. But then this game, he was great. He had 2 PBUs. He was, sticky in coverage against Mike Williams and those receivers out there. And I think McCreary has been the best defensive back on the team so far. I think McCreary's been excellent in the slot, both in run support and in coverage. And I think if Fulton can stay healthy, this could end up being a pretty decent secondary. Fulton and Hooker, which are like the 2 guys that are always on the injury report. And yeah, if those guys can stay healthy, this is a pretty good group. I thought Molden was decent as a full-time player at safety, which was a pleasant surprise. I thought Mike Brown had a decent game too in his role, basically in the Elijah Molden role. He kind of stepped up into that spot. So yeah, I thought the secondary was okay in this game, but yeah, poor Trey Avery just got picked on.
It was bad. Very, 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 very bad. I felt so bad for him. Let's talk about this Browns team, Mike. And we're at the hour mark already. So Bluegrass Beverages is our sponsor, 50 years in serving the Hendersonville area. They are awesome. It's a fantastic store. I know that Stoney went and bought a bunch of seasonal beers there. They have great beer selection, great wine selection. Just a massive store. Head over to Hendersonville, Bluegrass Beverages in Hendersonville, Tennessee, 555 East Main Street. Okay, the Browns have one of the worst quarterbacks in the NFL, bar none. In my opinion, like it's like in terms of passing the ball, it is Deshaun Watson, Justin Fields, and Mac Jones and Zach Wilson are all right there, who I think are just objectively terrible. And I'm about to put Kenny Pickett in there because he has looked terrible as well.
After a great preseason, everyone was on the Kenny Pickett breakout train.
Man, preseason matters so much. That's why Peyton Manning will win 0-4 every preseason game, and the Colts did. Listen. He's terrible, and I'm so happy that he is terrible. But there's more often than not, the Tennessee Titans have decided to play with their food on defense and really just play with their food in general. And to me, I think that you have 3 to 4 really good players on their defense. I would say this. There's Myles Garrett, who's elite and one of a kind, and possibly 2 to 3 other really good players on defense. Their offense does not scare me one bit whatsoever. And the one guy that did scare you didn't really have a lot of value going up against the Titans run defense. Now, he has a lot of value, don't get me wrong, but it's Titans run defense,
Yeah, I
Yeah.
don't think the Browns are running on them either.
Yeah,
Like
especially not now. But like even with Nick Chubb, they're going to try to run, but I don't think it's going to be very successful. But I look at this team and I'm looking at them going, I had them winning this game in my predictions, regardless. But I really think if they game plan strategically to help out and neutralize Myles Garrett, I think everything else falls into place for this offense. I really feel like this is a double-digit win game for the Tennessee Titans, and it's mainly because there is no run game to really truly worry about, and Deshaun Watson is terrible, horrible.
Yeah, I mean, I think Jerome Ford, you may be selling Jerome Ford a little bit short because I think part of it is their offensive line, which of course they lost Jack Conklin. And for all the hype that people have given DeJuan Jones, I'm not sure he's as good as Jack Conklin. But they are good on the interior, like Batonio, Pochich, and Teller, all solid across the interior. I think Jedrick Wills is a problem for them at left tackle. I think we're back on Arden Key Pro Bowl watch this week over there against Wills. But yeah, I mean, I think this is going to be a rock fight of a game because I think if you flip around to the other side, I think the Titans offense matches up not very well against the Browns defense because look, Myles Garrett and Za'Darius Smith against the Titans tackles, both of those are problems. You've got Newsome, who's turned into a really good corner. You've got obviously Denzel Ward, who's a fantastic corner. You got a really good safety in Grant Delpit, and I think Juan Thornhill's a pretty good player too. And I think Lonnie Walker Jr., one of the more underrated linebackers, and you got Owusu Koroma. Like they've got some dudes on that defense. So I think the Titans are going to struggle to score. I think the Browns are going to struggle to score. I think this is going to be like a 13-9 kind of game, unless the defenses start scoring for themselves. So I don't know. It's an interesting matchup with Chubb out to see. Like, I almost wonder if that works against the Titans to some degree, just because like the temptation to give Chubb a ton of carries would have been there. I don't know that the temptation to give Ford a ton of carries is going to be
But
the
isn't
same,
that a good
right?
thing? Don't you want the ball in Deshaun Watson's hands, especially with the defense like what the Titans have? To me, I'm putting the Titans defense on notice. They at least need to get some turnovers this game. And I feel like if they're not getting turnovers this game, this is a prime opportunity. They're going to have other opportunities, but this is a prime opportunity to really make your mark as a defense. And that's really what I'm thinking. When I say double digits, I think that there is going to be a defensive touchdown. Like I'm probably going to put Titans anytime touchdown, put a bet on that. But I feel like they really need to walk away with some turnovers. I don't have to have pick sixes or fumble sixes or anything like that. They need to generate some turnovers because this is a quarterback who has just got his eyes are glazed over whenever he has the ball. Unless he's messing with a ref, then he's going to, put his hands on that ref. And I was really worried that they were going to suspend him. I did not want Deshaun Watson suspended because I think DTR.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah.
I'd be really worried about some DTR actually. Yeah, I don't want any part of that. And then maybe he's a preseason darling like Kenny Pickett too, but I don't want any part of DTR. But I feel like they have to walk away, and they don't have to, but they at least they really do. They really have to start generating some turnovers because that's been a weak spot for this defense is generating turnovers. So I want them. They need to be aggressive. They need to fluster Deshaun Watson, and they really just need they cannot afford to let Deshaun Watson get into his one groove that he can get into a season now that he's back from with Cleveland.
No, yeah, I totally agree, and it'll be interesting because like there's some common knowledge right on both sides of the ball too, where like Jim Schwartz, nobody's gonna know the Titans better than Jim Schwartz right now, but then also nobody's going to know Deshaun Watson better than Tim Kelly and Mike Vrabel. So I think there's definitely some familiarity, which will be interesting to see how that kind of tracks from a game planning standpoint. But yeah, I think Watson has been so bad since he got to Cleveland that it's like, yeah, you really don't fear him now. Like Amari Cooper, I think there's some fear of him because I think he's the exact type of wide receiver that gives the Titans secondary absolute fits. I could see him having a big game, but I mean, Deshaun Watson, he's not had a single good game since he arrived in Cleveland. I mean, like his best game out of the whatever 8 starts that he's had there, he was 26 of 42 for 276, 1 touchdown, 1 pick. Like that's it. I mean, it's not like he's going off. Like he has not had, he hasn't hit 200 yards, but like 3 times, I think.
Did he? Has he done it this year?
He did it this week. He did it this past week.
That's 3 times.
Yeah. So 3 times in 8 games. So I mean, look, he's not the same Deshaun Watson you remember from all those matchups with the Texans. That guy is not there right now. It may never be there again, frankly. But
I think the key is just to run away, like run all the plays away from Myles Garrett's side. And I don't know if this is a good play action team or a good time to run a lot of play action. I know people are calling it play action, but I don't know if Myles Garrett's really going to give a shit whether you're handing it off to anybody or not. I think he's just going to be in that backfield. So I don't know if you want to have Ryan Tannehill turn his back to Myles Garrett at all. I think you may see a little bit of a lower play action percentage of plays.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how they approach that because that is a big risk, turning your back to Myles Garrett and then having him coming from your blind side as well. Like that is a turnover waiting to happen. If you don't, if Dillard is shaky, which he has been, and maybe you can help him, maybe you can't, but it's that is a dangerous play this week for sure, and against this good secondary too. I mean, we'll see if. I know the Browns were pretty banged up coming off Monday night, and I think there's some rest advantage there too for the Titans that could help them in this matchup. But man, it's a bad matchup, both sides of the ball for the offense, in my opinion.
Holy shit! Okay, let's talk about the Chicago Bears for real quick because this just got sent. Breaking. So for those who may not be familiar with what's going on, today, just today, Alan Williams has apparently been absent, who's their defensive coordinator for a couple of weeks, okay? And the media has given no clarity of what's going on with him. Today, Justin Fields has blamed his poor performance on coaching and just said that out in the media, just like threw a grenade out there that he's blaming coaching. They had Braxton... Is it Braxton Jones or Braxton? Yeah, Braxton Jones. He goes on IR. Now, apparently, according to sources familiar with the situation, both Halas Hall and Alan Williams' home, who was the defensive coordinator that I just mentioned, have been raided in connection with an undisclosed incident. Alan Williams' home was raided Sunday night after the team's Week 1 loss, hence why he's probably not been there. And Halas Hall was raided this morning. So all that today, they had Halas Hall was raided. Justin Fields is throwing his coaching under the bus. A player went on IR. Braxton Jones went on IR, and they're still not sure what's going on with Alan Williams. There are unsubstantiated or unsupported rumors that the FBI is raiding with the connection to child pornography. That is allegedly. That's from people that is unsubstantiated. One guy says, are the Bears raiding their own employees or are they trying to find the missing defensive playbook? But this is insane. And one guy goes, LOL, that offensive line just lets anyone in. The
Bears are a total mess. Speaking of which,
mess.
Someone mentioned, best bets for first coach fired this year, and Staley. It was because I had mentioned something about Staley being terrible, and I think Staley is probably on the hot seat. And don't they play somebody decent this week? Don't they? I wanted to say they did. Who do the Chargers play?
I'll look it up while you're talking.
But yeah, so But my response to that was like, yeah, I like Staley for that pick, but the one guy that could challenge him is Eberflus in Chicago, because that has
Eberflus.
been a disaster, and this is a good development for that bet right here. Justin Fields throwing him under the bus, or throwing the staff under the bus. Yeah, the Bears are such a mess. And remember when Justin Fields had like 2 screen passes go for a touchdown against the Titans, and everyone's like,
yeah, everybody's
"Whoa,
going
look at
crazy.
the Bears!
Justin Fields.
DJ
They're
Moore
screen
fixed him."
passes.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that was ridiculous. The Chargers played the Vikings, and a lot of people think that Kevin O'Connell's on the hot seat. Apparently, that Vegas has him pretty high up on the odds. And a couple people, which I didn't like. I don't see that happening whatsoever.
And they're at Minnesota too. So yeah, I mean, if the Chargers go to 0-3, I mean their bye week is week 5. They've got an early bye,
and you have Kellen Moore right there, who may or may not be ready to take over, but a lot of people think that he could be ready, and then might as well find out in a season like this. And you never know; he could provide a spark. All right, Mike, that will do it for us. I just wanted to. This Bears situation is just insane. It's the most insane thing going on right now. This is like the Urban Meyer Jacksonville era, where just something crazy is happening in Chicago every 5 minutes. That'll do it for us. He's Mike Herndon at Mike Herndon NFL on X. What did you write today about at paulkarski.com about the Titans?
I wrote about Tim Kelly, trends from the first couple weeks that we've noted. A lot of stuff that we've talked about today, but I wrote down some of the plays in there as well from Titans Chargers. So go check it out. It was a good one, I think.
Stackingtheinbox.com. We have 3 articles out since the Sunday game. That would be a 24 hours later review. We have a second down is an issue for the Titans offense article. And then also a what's going on with Christian Fulton kind of handcuffing the Tennessee Titans right now. All of that at secondinbox.com. Bluegrass Beverages, our sponsor. 440 Sports, a football show Mondays and Wednesdays, 1 p.m. Central Standard Time. Make sure you guys tune into that. I'm sure me and Braden are going to have some good times talking about what's next for Alabama football and this weird season that they're having. That will be talked about tomorrow. We'll also be previewing the Browns game, getting a lot of stuff that me and Mike didn't get to today. But for Mike Herndon, I'm Zach Lyons. This has been Football and Other F Words, and you have just been effed.